You get through that first chapter and a half, though, things change. This morning's reading comes to us from after the midpoint. After Joel has just called out to the people to renew their commitment to the God of Israel. And even though their land has been turned into a desolate wilderness, an emptiness, a place where there seems to be no fertility, Joel says God does not forget his people. The promise of God's renewal is all over those 9 verses you heard read. For to a people who had experienced loss, who experienced devastation and destruction, Joel offers instead images of abundant rain. Rain coming down and renewing the whole land, turning ravaged, devoured fields into bountiful harvests. The larders may have been empty, but they will be full. Rain would come down from the skies, wine would pour again from the wine jars, oil from the oil jars, and everything would be just as good as it was before. Well, actually, no. That's not what Joel says. That's not what God says through Joel. I mean, it looks like he's going in that direction. But just when you think he said, all right, everything is back to the way it was, everything has been restored, Joel takes it a step further. He is not just promising copious precipitation. He is not just promising all the cases of Trader Joel's $3 chuck that you can carry. That's not what he's promising. After the renewal, after the pouring out of material goodness again, there's to come another pouring out. One that is very different from the simple earthly harvest that has come before. We hear of renewal, and then suddenly we get this. Then, after, this is God speaking through Joel, I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, even on the male and female slaves. In those days I shall pour out my Spirit. We're hearing a promise of a fulfillment, of a pouring out that goes well beyond just the story, what was before. It goes beyond renewal. This is not just let's take it back to the year when everything was exactly the way we wanted it to be. It was past that. God is, through Joel, promising to give something better still. At some point in the future, and in that matter, Joel is as vague as the dating of his very own letter. Sometime after, God will give his own self, his own Spirit, to everyone who has sought it, who has trusted in God. And it does not matter how old they are. It does not matter where they stand in the social pecking order. This is a gift, not just to be given to the wealthy and to the powerful. This is a gift to be given to all. This gift of the Spirit, as the verses that follow so bluntly illustrate, is a frightening thing. It frightens them, the idea that somehow God will share himself completely with everyone. Remember, although we don't know much about Joel, he was writing from a time when most of the worship of God was in the temple. There was a reason you had worship in the temple. It wasn't just because it was a convenient place for people to come and leave their donations. You worshiped in the temple because the temple served as a containment field for God. People were terrified of what might happen if God's power spread out beyond the place where it must be held. Priests were afraid of God's holiness. It seems strange to us now, but they were terrified of the idea that somehow God might spread. We don't know what happens, what might happen if such an event should occur. It was frightening and unsettling. And those verses after the pouring out of the Spirit show a little bit of their fear about what happens on that day when God moves outside of the doors of the temple. This was upsetting to people because what they wanted, well, they wanted to receive back the harvest they had expected. They wanted the return of the thing that they knew, that they anticipated. They wanted things to be back, business as usual, life as usual, church as usual. When we are struggling, as they were, with the cutters and poppers and devourers that can eat their way through the joy of our lives, it's hard to imagine anything more. But Joel has two things to tell them and two things to tell each of us. First, he tells us that in the midst of those times when everything seems to have been taken away, when everything around us seems to be shattered and devoured and hopelessly ruined, there is always hope. Whether we are struggling in our relationships, whether we can't find work that fulfills us, there is always hope. If we are struggling with illness, struggling with loss, struggling with despair, Joel reminds us that there is hope. That desert time, when the cloud that devours has passed over everything and taken it away from you, that desert time will pass. God will bring the life-giving rain. But afterward comes the second thing that Joel promises. After the struggle, after hardship, God may bring something more. A change in us that we did not expect, that we could not see coming. That transformation in us, that truly new thing, is something Joel calls on us. Be willing to embrace it, realize it might come. When the Spirit of the living God is poured out like rain, the harvest that will bring in us is, well, it's something that's hard to describe. Each of us have to be sure that our hearts and our minds are open for it and await that harvest in ourselves. Amen.